Short exercise 18-3. We're going to get practice classifying costs. So let's review from the PowerPoint. Let's say we are a company that manufactures cars. So there's two types of costs. They're either period costs or product costs. So product costs are any cost specifically for building the car. A period cost is a cost that has nothing to do with building the car. So for the salespeople who sell the car, their wages would be a period cost. The accountant and the bookkeepers, their wages would be period costs. The showroom where they sell the cars, those costs for that, like rent and depreciation, would be period costs. So under product costs, costs directly related to building the car, we have two types of costs, direct costs and indirect costs. A direct cost is a cost that can be directly tied to making the car, such as direct materials, like which tires were used to build the car, which seats, which frame, etc. And the direct labor are the people who work directly on making those cars. So using their timesheets, you can tell who worked on what cars. So they are a direct labor, which is a form of a direct cost. Now, there are indirect costs, which are costs used to make the car, but it's either impractical to trace them to a specific car or impossible or not cost effective. For example, the tools used, the hand tools used by a worker, that tool is used on many cars, so you can't tie the cost of that wrench or the screwdriver or the hammer to a specific car. So it's an indirect material. And you have people who work in the factory, like the factory janitor and the factory supervisor. They work in the factory, so therefore their wages are a product cost, but they don't specifically, you can't tie their salary directly to certain cars, so they are indirect labor. And then all other manufacturing overhead would be including things like the factory rent, factory depreciation, maintenance in the factory or of the factory, factory utilities, factory insurance, factory property taxes, etc. So all three of these are just subcategories of manufacturing overhead. So now we can get to this problem. So Granger's Cards is a manufacturer of greeting cards. So we make greeting cards. Classify its cost by matching the cost to the terms. So we have to employ some artists who create the cards. So how would we classify their cost? Well, they actually work on producing the cards, so they are a product cost. And because they directly work on the cards, they are a direct labor. Wages of materials, warehouse workers. So we have some warehouse workers who work in the obviously the warehouse where they have the materials, and they collect the materials, they organize the materials, but they're not directly making the cards. So they are not a direct cost, they would be an indirect cost. And of the indirect costs, they are specifically the indirect labor. Next we have the paper. Well, the paper is obviously a direct material used to make the greeting cards. So that is a direct cost called direct materials. Depreciation on the manufacturing equipment. So we have some manufacturing equipment, and the equipment, because they're manufacturing equipment, it is a type of product cost. But we can't tie the depreciation of that equipment to a specific card or set of cards. So it is an indirect cost. And in this case, it's manufacturing overhead. It's not an indirect material, and it's not indirect labor. Other manufacturing overhead. Next, we got the manufacturing plant manager's salary. So because he's the plant manager, he's a manager of the plant means the factory, he is a product cost. His salary, his or her salary, is a product cost. But they don't specifically work on making the card, so they are not direct labor. He or she is not direct labor. He or she is indirect labor, factory supervisor. Same with the janitor that works in the factory. Next, we got property taxes on the manufacturing plant. So because the property taxes are on the factory, they are a product cost, but they cannot be tied directly to certain cards, so they are a manufacturing overhead. And last, we got glue for the envelopes. This is a product cost because it's used to make the cards, but we can't cost effectively count how many drops of glue went into each card. So that is a manufacturing overhead account called indirect materials. Oops, indirect materials. There we go. And that's it.